Welcome to Memphis Machine,
a Muddy Pig production. I'm Jonathan Bass.
And I'm Carl Casperson, and together we're looking to show off the creative sights and sounds of Memphis, Tennessee.
Amen.
This is the last interview of our season 1. Hope you've enjoyed Memphis Machine. We have thoroughly enjoyed making it and getting to meet some awesome creatives here in the city of Memphis, making Memphis pretty.
And in this episode, we interview Opera Memphis
Ned Canty, director,
and Michael Sakir.
Michael Sakir, music director extraordinaire. That guy can conduct and play piano like a beast.
Oh man, his piano chops are ridiculous.
I got to say, there's a little nepotism, I think, in this episode. My wife works at Opera Memphis. Yay, Becky. And I was a little nervous. I'm a little giddy at the top of this interview. You can hear it because I mispronounced Michael's name there. I think I said Michael Sakir.
Oh yeah, we get into the candlestick maker.
Candlestick maker. I hope you enjoy. Yeah. So no offense, Michael.
Well, and also Ned. We just forgot his name all of a sudden.
I think so.
It's the jitters when you start an interview. Yeah.
Ned's success with Opera Memphis is intentional. Of course, I hope he gleans some things of how Ned's philosophy of management is working for that organization. Of course, this episode is brought to you by Snakebite Company, makers of the original Snakebite bottle opener and Mamba bar tending tool. 100% made in the USA, Snakebite loves making products and apparel for the happy hours, after hours, and weekends when it's your time to relax and just be yourself, Jonathan. Just be yourself. Check them out at snakebiteco.com and on Instagram.
Beautiful little church keys.
Yeah, we
beer consumption so much.
We use ours every Sunday.
Every Sunday?
Every Sunday. Check them out at snakebiteco. And also the gentlemen and ladies at Redwire Audiovisual, a great company here in the Mid-South that can help you take your facility to its potential. They are experts in audio and visual design and installation. Redwire Audio Video specializes in the design, installation, rental, and support of high-quality and affordable custom audio, video, lighting, broadcast, and control systems for worship facilities and large public venues. Reach out to Redwire Video at www.redwireav.com. And
is there another W in there?
www.
That's staying in.
Speaking of pointing out my deficiencies, you need to come down to Ernestine and Hazel's.
Don't know what that means.
Tell them about Ernestine and Hazel's, Jonathan.
Ernestine and Hazel's is one of our favorite places in Memphis.
Probably
our favorite because they keep having us back there to play every week. They have graciously allowed us to interview most of the people on this season.
And they support live jazz. Go figure.
Yeah, right. Great place.
Great place.
Vibe.
Soul
you should go check
burgers.
it out. Sorry. Mercy.
Soul burgers. Soul burgers.
Enjoy the interview.
Welcome to Memphis Machine. We are at Opera Memphis with Ned Canty and Michael Sakir. Sakir. Not Shaker. I heard Baker and Shaker. Michael Sakir.
And Candlestick Maker.
This is going well so far.
So far. This is going great. We are here to explore Opera Memphis and shed some light on what I can. Well, of course, I'm somewhat biased. My wife works here, but I do love Opera Memphis, and it has shown some light on the realm of opera to me in a new light. So let's go ahead and get started. And Ned.
Hey,
why don't you give us a little rundown of Opera Memphis and then you entering Opera Memphis?
So Opera Memphis is a 62-year-old company. It started years ago, opera in Memphis. Before that, opera has been coming to Memphis since there was a Memphis, usually with touring productions. For many years, that was the Metropolitan Opera on tour. Opera Memphis started because the opera came once a year, and so Opera Memphis started as essentially a community theater that did opera. It was sort of supplemented Memphis Open Air Theater at the Levitt Shell, before it was the Levitt Shell, where they would do, in the summer, they would do light opera, operetta, musical theater, that sort of thing. So those were the two local organizations. Opera Memphis then started started growing with the support of a lot of generous folks. And when the Met stopped touring in 1986, sort of took on the responsibility of producing opera for the entire region. You know, we're the only professional opera company between St. Louis to the north, New Orleans to the south, Little Rock to the west, and Nashville to the east. So we're responsible for a great big chunk of the country.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I got here in 2011, moved here. I'd been living in Philadelphia with my wife and working in New York at the New York Television Festival, which was very exciting, 5 years. With a front row seat to the invention of web television and webisodes and YouTube and all that stuff. So it was a very fun 5-year detour from opera. But at a certain point, the job just expanded so much that my boss wanted me to just basically be at a desk all day and not do opera at all anymore. And I realized if I was going to be at a desk most of the time, I'd rather do that in opera than TV, as much as I love it. And now I can just go back to enjoying TV.
Great.
Yeah.
Michael.
I joined Opera Memphis full-time last year. Prior to that, I had been working on short-term periods, starting with 30 Days of Opera 3 or 4 years ago. For those of you who are not familiar with Opera Memphis's 30 Days of Opera, for the past 7 years, throughout the month of September, we present 30 days of daily free public performances all across the city.
Yes.
Whether it's farmers markets, street festivals, libraries, retail shops, grocery stores, and I think we're increasingly having a really positive civic imprint with the work we're doing in 30 days and beyond that. Back when I came in for the 30 days 3 or 4 years ago, it was a very last-minute thing. I just happened to have a September free, and it turned into a really good relationship. And I have come back since in the capacity of a rehearsal pianist, a conductor, and now those things are just some of what I do here. I do everything from conduct the main stage productions to hire the piano tuner and everything in between.
Awesome. So Ned, I know that you're not a big fan of, if I were to say you're making opera cool again.
I would say it never stopped being cool.
See, exactly, right.
Yeah.
But maybe for some, now, you know, for myself, someone who opera has been peripheral, and my folks didn't make a point of, you know, exploring maybe more of the classic arts. It was more pop, whatever, suburban life. But in how would you describe your philosophy of music, of opera, of what you're trying to do here?
I mean, my philosophy of music is that there's good music and bad music, and that's it.
But why opera?
Why opera? You know, opera, I personally enjoy opera, and I didn't grow up with opera either. I grew up with a mom who listened to show tunes, a dad who listened to the Beatles and Gregorian chant, sister who was into 70s folk, and a brother who listened to heavy metal. And I grew up listening to post-punk, you know, Dead Kennedys, the Ramones, and then into sort of 80s, you know, whatever you would have called it. I think they called it new rock at the time. I don't know what it's called now, but like They Might Be Giants, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
They were great. Saw them live a couple of times when they still have their first 2 albums on vinyl because I refused to give up my childhood. So I grew up with lots of different kinds of music. Like most people in America, though, I had actually heard a ton of opera because, you know, you hear it in commercials and movies and TV shows all the time. I mean, just I was watching Preacher on AMC. There's a whole Don Giovanni section in there with one of the vampires in New Orleans. You know, it's still used in so many ways. So most people have heard so much more opera than they even know. So like most people, I'd heard a lot of it. When I first started getting into it, I came to opera from theater, which is what my training's in. And I'll be honest and say that opera sometimes, it's a slower burn. You know, the first couple operas I worked on and saw, I enjoyed the comedies especially. But it was when I was working on Madame Butterfly for the first time, which is the first opera this season. And the first time at the end of Act 1, at the end of this love duet, the first time the 2 singers sang full out with the full orchestra at the end of this love duet, and the two of them both just let it all out unamplified. And, it was like that old, Maxell audio tape commercial of the guy getting blown through the back of his chair. It had that kind of power. So for me, what I love about opera is just the power that comes from a story being told by being sung. The music in general appeals to our primal selves. We don't think about music in the same way, whether it's the beat that makes us bop our head along or the tune that makes us feel emotion. I always find it amazing that opera survived for so long in America before we had surtitles. Now there's a running translation of every opera that's in a foreign language, so you can follow the story, exactly who's saying what at what time. But the fact that it survived for so long, I think, is a testament to how powerful it is. Or when somebody sends around, Paul Potts on Britain's Got Talent singing Nessun Dorma, people don't need to know what the context of that song is. They're just moved by these sounds. They feel something, because of these sounds. So I think that's just an incredible power. And I think today, especially, that ability to, in a world where so much of our entertainment is from a remove, it's a little snarky or a little jaded hipster irony kind of thing. I think so much of our entertainment is that sometimes just having a balls to the wall, full out freak out from an opera, whether it's joy or sadness. It's just a rare thing today. So I always enjoy that part of it as well.
Okay. Yes. Agreed.
So, yeah. I want to while we're on that thread. So I've heard you say this a couple of times. One of which was on your TED Talk, all right, which we'll reference in the show notes. But music theater versus opera, and so you've said, if anybody wants to talk to me about this later. So this is later.
It is later. God, like a year and a half later. Music theater and opera diverged in America. In Europe, they have a phrase called music drama or just music theater, not musical theater, or the lyric theater sometimes. Basically anything where the story is told through music as well as speaking. They don't draw these same, distinctions that we draw. And arguably, Les Miserables is an opera. No, full stop. It's an opera. There's not a single word of spoken dialogue. It was written in French. It's 3 hours long. It spans decades of time. And probably and arguably, the Mikado or HMS Pinafore that we're doing, you could easily make the argument that it is a musical. The fact of the matter is that both of these mediums are stories told through song. Musicals, American musical theater as we think of it, usually has a dialogue component. But really in America, the two started diverging because of two things. One is money. So at a certain point, musical theater, Broadway became for-profit, opera became not-for-profit, which meant if you don't need to worry about ticket sales so much, you can have, fewer feel-good stories. You don't need to worry as much about it being a huge smash to recoup your money and make a lot of money. And I think that that's both good and bad. It's allowed opera to tell some more mature and deeper stories that you wouldn't be able to find in other media in America. At the same time, it has also led sometimes to a kind of art for art's sake thing where, if you don't think about how is this going to reach people, if you don't want your art to reach and move lots and lots of people, then you're probably not thinking about your art the right way. So, in both cases, it's sort of the two halves of the same art that of these two branches that shouldn't have broken away. I think both of them can learn from each other and support each other. Then I think the other thing is the other big divergence was in technology. Musical theater is now almost always amplified, and opera is not. So when people hear the operatic voice and they think it sounds so different, it is different because it's produced differently, because you have to be heard not from this little piece of technology an inch from my mouth, but you have to be heard from somebody 1,000 feet away in a room full of hundreds, if not thousands, of other people. And so it's just a different thing. It's the same reason why, people think of acting, operatic acting, as being overblown. Part of that is because for many decades, you were in this huge opera house. You had to tell a story that was possibly in a foreign language. And so you did get these big gestures and these things. that's been gone for 20, 30, 40 years, really. But of course, since most of us still know opera through commercials and, TV shows and cartoons, popular culture hasn't quite caught up with where things are. I do think that I have learned since that TED Talk, somebody said something to me in a conversation a couple months afterwards, that for them, it is a spectrum, but the spectrum is about what's more important, the words or the music. And that in musical theater, the words are a little more important, and in opera, the music is a little more important. And that that is probably the closest I've come to thinking, yeah, okay, I see that. And I think some of that actually might be just because as Americans who speak English, we're hearing musical theater, we hear the words, so it's important that we understand them, and that's how we ingest a lot of the story. So, but even so, I do think that there's something to that, and it's why there are a lot of musicals where someone who can't really sing something can get through something by kind of speak singing or whatever, because they could still tell the story, with the music backing them up. But that's probably a longer answer than you perfect. Wanted, but really for me that's what it is. And I do think that anybody who loves musical theater who does not try out opera is doing themselves a disservice, and very much vice versa. And, I said earlier, I ran a TV festival for 5 years. And, certainly at the time I started doing it, people would have considered it, quote unquote, low art. I don't know that they still would have said that. But, the interesting thing about opera is that everybody should try it out a couple of times and decide if they like it. It's an option for you, and if you love music, if you love theater, if you love poetry, you should try it out a couple of times, and then if you don't like any of them, for God's sake, do something else. Don't torture yourself. Not everybody likes everything. That's totally fine too. But with opera, I just spend a lot of my time, as both of you have heard, trying to convince people who think they don't like it, though they've never actually been to one.
Michael, so Ned mentioned. And I totally agree with that today, even though people may say, I don't like opera, I don't like symphonic music, you're saturated with it when you go see films. You're saturated. When you watch AMC, opera is quoted. You can't say you haven't heard it. So, or someone can't say that. Why are you in this vein of music? How did you land and decide, okay, this is where I'm going to at least stay for a while musically?
I was always that classical music nerd who, unlike Ned, tried to diverge into more popular culture and always failed miserably. But so I always knew that I wanted to conduct. It wasn't until graduate school and just after that opera made the most sense for me. And then became a real love for me. It was the intersection of my talents and interests. It was where piano met conducting, met my love for working with singers and my appreciation for their dynamic personalities, and as well as my love for storytelling and theater. Since then, in great part thanks to my time with Opera Memphis, it has made me appreciate more about popular culture and all of the things that it has in common. And like Ned said, how there should be such a little distinction between opera and musical theater and pop culture.
Right.
Also, since landing in the opera world, I have come to appreciate its unique storytelling capabilities are unique in the other realms of music and theater, because with the combination of music and text and storytelling and all the elements that go into it, it has a very unique capability to promote empathy. And a lot of the people who are advocates for the art form today are just emphasizing the empathy part of opera and how few performing arts can take us outside of ourselves and make us appreciate the unique perspectives of these characters and their struggles or their joys. A mother would have a very difficult time not sympathizing with Cho-Cho-san in Madama Butterfly, who struggles with whether to...
No spoilers.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Struggles with issues confronting certain mothers in very difficult circumstances.
Okay, but you just said something I definitely want to jump on, and that's maybe a cultural norm would think, well, opera, symphonic music, that's very intellectual, it's very academic, and they would completely miss out. There are hearts being broken, there are lives being restored, and I mean this exploration of the human condition, gut wrenching, like that. That's so. My testimony of the short time I've been in the orbit of Opera Memphis is that you have to go. You just have to go, and I actually say this about any kind of live music. Like, you have to go see human beings come together and do this thing, and be in the present. It's because it's different than a 5-inch screen, or watching it on television. And even just growing up, when I was flipping the radio station before Spotify, it's like opera. I could park it there for a minute, and I just was like, well, I have no context. I have no idea what's happening. I just fly right by it. Tell the people what's it like conducting an opera when everything has come together, the tech has come together, the singers, like when everything's humming. What's that feel like?
It's amazing. And what you said about how you just have to go see it and see all the people putting this stuff together. At Opera Memphis, we do promote a real open door culture. We want the community to come see what we do here, whether it's at our WKNO previews at the Clark Opera Memphis Center, not just the performances, but also at the Germantown Performing Arts Center, but also the performances throughout 30 Days of Opera at the Midtown Festival. And we are having open rehearsals throughout the month of September for one of the productions we're doing during 30 Days of Opera, which is moving up in the world. I do that every time. Moving up in the world. This great piece inspired by an elevator worker at the Crosstown Concourse, and there will be rehearsals available to attend during the Cooper Young Festival on the 15th, I think, of September. So people can actually come see what I get to experience putting it all together all the time. And it is thrilling. It is the ultimate collaboration. There is nothing greater than letting the best of every musician shine. And something that I'm personally working on as a conductor is to trust other artists to let them let their strengths shine out the greatest that they can. And that's about trust, and that's something that just comes, I think, with time. So, yes, come see a rehearsal, see a performance, and see us all put this big puzzle piece together.
Yes, and I mean, speaking of which, how many human beings are pulling together to bring this off? And I mean, I know anywhere from 2 just duos, maybe with 30 Days, all the way up to with the larger production. You've got
massive. Yeah, I mean, gosh, I did the full-time job equivalent thing my first year here before my first Rotary Club talk, and then I realized actually they just wanted me to bring in singers. They didn't want to hear all the statistics, but the for a show like Madame Butterfly, let's say we would have 6, 7 principal singers, chorus of 14. Is that right?
15.
15. 1 non-speaking extra, a child. We would have stage management and directing team of 3, conductor, director, costume shop, several folks doing that, both creating and backstage, doing the costumes, lighting designer, assistant lighting designer. We would have backstage crew, probably 10 or 15 folks throughout the course of it. In the pit, 35 in the pit. So yeah, I mean, it's and that's actually pretty small for some of the things that we do. You know, there are operas that like Strauss's Salome, which we would love to do, where the reduced orchestration is 82.
Right.
And it was written for, I think, 112 or like 115 instruments.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. And and again, it's one of those things where we talk about this a lot, about size and about about how best to tell the stories, because, obviously when people think about opera, they think about the scope and the scale to some extent. The famous quote that was never actually said, but it's still a good quote, so I'll make it, was that Napoleon said, "The only thing more expensive than war is opera." He didn't actually say it, but isn't that a great quote?
That is a great quote.
Because, you can put so much into it. You don't need to. And we always try to play a nice sort of money ball in terms of creating the best possible experience we possibly can. But, there are pieces that we do that, have 50 or 60 musicians that we couldn't even do, and we would have to find a special place to do them. I'm trying to think of the largest chorus we've had in a while. I guess for Bohème we had 18 plus a children's chorus of 12 plus 2 supers, just in the chorus, that is. So yeah, it takes a lot of people, to all of them working at the top of their game to make this stuff come together.
So how much of a role do Memphis musicians and vocalists play at Opera Memphis? And we might want to get into just what it's like to try to be like an operatic vocalist. Just that life.
The Memphis Symphony Orchestra has been our most consistent partner through our productions in the last several years. I love working with them. They're great players and dedicated in everything that they perform. We're lucky in Memphis to have a really excellent pool of singers, local singers, to choose from, who are also very invested in this opera company and love performing with us, whether it's someone like Chelsea Miller, who was originally from Memphis, a soprano who went through the Young Artist Program with the University of Memphis and Opera Memphis. And we're lucky enough to still have her in town, and we cast her nearly in every production we do because she is worth it and that talented, and we want her to go off and do amazing things outside of Memphis, but not really. No, of course we do.
She was in Ohio at Ohio Light Opera this summer. She's going to be at Anchorage Opera this fall. So she was in Chautauqua Opera 2 years ago. So
nice.
She's
that's great.
Yeah, eventually we won't be able to get her as frequently, but it'll all be to the good.
Yeah. But and then all the way to youth choruses and the young singers that make up the conservatory, the summer conservatory. There's a lot of phenomenal talent in Memphis, and we love to invest in it, and they love to give back to us with their talent.
And our shows range. There are some shows we do that are almost entirely Memphis singers. For a lot of the main stage shows, we do bring in talent from, we bring in singers from the Met, we bring in singers from Europe, folks who've sung all over. We have a very good reputation with singers, not that we pay a lot, but that we really respect singers, that we do our best to take good care of them and really have a sort of no BS arts focused experience, that it really just is about how can we all work together to create the best performances we could possibly create. So that's something we've worked very hard to create here. So we, for Madame Butterfly, we're bringing in a couple of singers from out of town. Reggie Smith will be coming from San Francisco Opera. Una Lee, who is singing Madame Butterfly, she's sung this role on pretty much every continent that has an opera house. She's sung it. I think Antarctica, probably she hasn't sung it there. But so we're bringing her in. Madame Butterfly is a bit of a specialist role in a lot of ways. Then we have several other local singers playing her family, other folks around. We've got our company artists who are with us for the whole year, one of whom, Philip Heimbrook, is local already, and one of whom, Stephanie Dosch, is going to be joining us for a year. She'll live here for a year and perform in multiple shows as part of the sort of journeyman part of her career. In terms of how is it for an opera singer, I would tell you what I tell everybody is if there is anything else in the world that will make you happy, do that instead. Because
nice. I've heard stories about auditioning and just...
it's for any role we are casting, I could, off the top of my head, list 10 to 15 singers that I would happily cast, and I don't have a good memory.
Right.
If I went to my files, I could increase that to 50 or 75. If I open it up to auditions from folks in New York, just folks who have agents in New York, that'll be another 75. Mm-hmm. It just... For any role, there are hundreds of singers who want to sing that role, and that's a hard life. That's not a life I would choose for myself. I started out as an actor, and after about 2 years, I thought, this is terrible. This is terrible. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. The life of auditioning, not knowing what's coming next. That said, there are people for whom this is the thing that they want to do, and I suppose even, if I wanted to make money, I would do something different. I do like knowing where I'm going to be a week from now or a month from now, which is why I'm a general director and not a freelancer. But the life of a singer is very hard. It's one of the reasons why we're trying constantly to find new ways to hire them. For instance, we launched a few years back a Christmas caroling program, which basically is almost more of a referral service. So if you want a Christmas carol, an a cappella quartet in Victorian garb to come to your company Christmas party, we will provide those singers and we rehearse with them so they all know the same sort of core book. But the money is essentially just pass through. It's just a way to put some money in the pockets of local singers. Because if you want to be a full-time professional opera singer, there is not enough work in Memphis for you to do that. So you could be based in Memphis, like Mary Wilson or Chelsea, and work outside of town sometimes. Or you could there are people who have other, who teach, who do other things as well. But it's a hard life. These are people who dedicate themselves to this, throw themselves into it 100%. I have incredible respect for them for doing that, mainly because, as I like to tell people, I'm a huge failure. My dream was to be a Shakespearean actor. I failed at it miserably, and I'm so much happier because I failed at it young enough to go and do something I'm actually good at. So it's I'm guessing that the life of any musician is like that, and I don't know enough about the life of a gig musician in Memphis to compare it. But we also, as with things like Bohemian Rhapsody, we're always looking for ways to intersect with working musicians and make sure that Memphis, which really is the music city, is a place where people from different genres or different backgrounds are coming together and performing together, listening to each other, learning from each other, because any opera singer who can't learn from a hip-hop artist or a punk rock screamer, if they can't learn something from listening to that person, they're not trying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bohemian Rhapsody, what Jonathan and I got to participate at the Levitt Shell. Was that the close of 30 Days, or was that the close of?
It was towards the end.
But was it officially attached, or was that just happened?
Oh, it is. Levitt Shell is by far the biggest deal performance we have throughout 30 Days of Opera.
Okay, so and we
a lot of fun.
And we played Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody,
which closes the whole program and has for the last 5 or 6 years.
How many singers was it?
Usually, it's actually bigger than what we had last year. Because we were rehearsing La Traviata at the same time, we had to split our forces that night, but fortunately the administrative staff of Opera Memphis, many of whom are singers as well, stepped up and joined us on stage for that concert, and it was actually one of the best renditions of Bohemian Rhapsody that we've ever had.
It was a blast. So how unique is 30 Days? Speaking of 30 Days, is that a unique thing to Opera Memphis, or?
So yes. What I would say is the stuff that we do, this idea of going and popping up, doing free performances, many other opera companies have been doing stuff like that, and places like Philadelphia Opera were doing really fantastic pop-ups, very ornate things, and people were doing pop-ups in grocery store, all that sort of stuff. I think the difference is we were the first company to dedicate so much of our resources in a year to saying we're going to do this for an entire month, and we are going to value these performances in a similar way. We're going to take these seriously. They're not an add-on, they're not a goof, they're not an appetizer, that if the only opera somebody hears in an entire year or in a decade is a single aria that we sing at Otherland's Coffee, we want that to be the most amazing operatic experience it can possibly be. So we take it very seriously. It's why in the first year, I went to every performance but one. And that was just one I just could not make it to that one. But we take it very seriously. I think also as it's developed over the course of the years, and there are many other companies that have done 30 days of opera, 40 days of opera, 7 days of opera, 31 days of opera awesomeness, which is way too long a title. It doesn't scan nearly as nicely. Some of them have asked us for advice and help and have really nicely shaped it to fit their city. And we're perfectly happy to have people do it, and share what we've learned, certainly. And others have not done that courtesy. But that's okay. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And like I said, we sort of looked at what are other people doing that's interesting. How do we make that relevant to Memphis? And even just doing it for 30 days was all about saying what would show Memphis that we mean it. Well, doing something every day for a month, we're not fooling around. This is something we're serious about. It's not a gimmick. This is a part of who we are now. And a lot of the stuff that we did because Memphis is still a city where people talk to each other, people gossip, people talk after church, they talk at the water cooler. And we knew that people would say, the weirdest thing happened to me at the dog park yesterday. These people came up and started singing, but instead of singing, they were meowing. And somebody would say, oh my God, I was in Overton Square and somebody drove up on the back of a pickup and serenaded me at brunch. We knew that would happen, and it did. We're a very well-sized community for that kind of thing. And I think if we had tried to do this in New York, nobody would have noticed. It would just have been too big. It would have been too spread out. We couldn't have made it enough of an event. And I think the more successful versions of this that other colleagues have done are in medium and smaller size companies for a number of reasons.
Let's not forget the last day of that too. What do you do? Like 80 visits or something? 30
locations.
I'm just kidding, yeah.
We go to 30 different locations and sing at 30 different locations.
All in one day.
We're not doing that this year.
We're not.
That was a little insane.
I'm the kind of boss I try never to ask the staff to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, whether it's, for Cooper Young, I try to always be one of the people who goes to set up at 6 a.m. I try to do that. The problem is I don't actually sing. I can't sing worth a damn. So with something like that, I think it's always harder because I sometimes will ask people to do things that maybe are a little too ambitious because I don't really understand what I'm asking for. It just sounds so cool. So sometimes I have to ask for those things.
We do have a really fantastic closer for this year's 30 Days of Opera on September 30th. We're going to be doing a block party at Life Church at the corner of Jackson.
Living Hope.
Sorry, Living Hope Church at the corner of Jackson and McLean. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, I think you guys have made that connection for us, right? With Living Hope.
Was that possible? Yes.
That was yours.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, so with the 30 days, what I got to witness last year was everything from duos, trios, all the way up to the Playground King. Was that the King? What was that called? Was that
the Playground King?
The Playground King at Shelby Farms in the park, literally.
Yeah, it's a playground opera.
With the singers tumbling around and everything. It was a blast.
Our director of operations 4 years ago, 5 years ago,
it was the very first year.
Put together a really phenomenal, short and tight children's opera for 4 opera singers to perform on a playground. This, I guess, is the first year that we will not be presenting it. We just agreed that it needed to have a break. And but there will be still plenty of events for families to attend throughout the month.
That's great. So 30 days, intentional pollinization of opera for the city, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think we first thought of it as guerrilla marketing, first and foremost.
That's great.
But it really has grown beyond that. And I think part of that is the experience that I've had, you know, at the libraries in particular. You know, you go to some of the libraries in, you know, neighborhoods that don't have artistic resources, and you know, you might be performing for 5 or 6 kids.
Right.
But you see the attention they give it. They're just in awe. They're enraptured by it. Well, these kids aren't going to buy a ticket. They don't have the money, and they're not going to buy a ticket next year or the year after. But that experience in and of itself has value. You can't put a monetary value on it, but I was there. I feel that value, and that is one of the reasons we do this kind of thing. But you know, who's to say that 10 years from now, when that kid's in college, they don't have a roommate who's going to an opera and has a spare ticket, and all of a sudden they just have this little seed. So, you know, pollinization is a great word, and I think it's as more and more, this is the 3rd year in a row where, as a part of 30 Days, we are doing a full opera. Now, that's, you know, it's a short opera, it's 20 minutes long, it's small forces, but it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a story, and if you go and you see that, you've seen an opera. You can no longer say, oh, I've never seen an opera. You'll have seen one. That's becoming a bigger and bigger part of what this is. But the whole thing has really been about redefining what our mission is, who we are, and what we do. Because, you know, one of the initial things that I noticed when I first took this job that got me thinking along the lines that led to 30 Days was there was some form we were filling out for a grant, and it was asking how many people we'd reached. And at the time, they were just writing how many tickets we had sold to the shows. And I said, well, what about, you know, the WKNO preview? That's free. Are we counting those people? No. Well, that's an hour of music. That's free. What about the education programs that we tour around? No, we're not counting those. What about the, you know, we were only counting the people who had paid to come and see something. And that just seemed idiotic. You know, that just seemed absurd to me. And it really made me want to redefine. If anything, I feel like the things that we do for free should count twice, because we're not making money back on them. You know, we're going out and finding the money and getting the donations to try to ensure that exposure, that the ability to participate in great art is a basic human right, that it's not the whipped cream of life. It is the meat and potatoes of life.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and it should be.
Preach.
You know,
that's good.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, when I talk 30 days, Michael's heard it all before, but it is, you know, this stuff is important. And I think in a city like Memphis that has so many challenges with transit, something like 30 Days where we are spreading ourselves out is really important. My friend Kevin grew up in the Bronx, and you know, he didn't have, like, he wouldn't have had access to opera and theater and you know, all of these things in walking distance of his neighborhood, but because of the subway, he could get to any cultural event in the city, and there are tons of cultural events in New York that are free. And that, you know, that opportunity should be, again, that's a basic human right, and right now it's not one that everybody in Memphis can take part in.
Wow.
So you mentioned the educational outreach. Excuse me. Can we talk about that and the summer conservatory for teens?
Sure.
Yeah.
There's an education tour that we have been doing in the spring over the past several years. It's a kids show that lasts about 40 minutes, and our director of operations, Sarah Squire, has been the one spearheading that and sometimes directing that. They're always hilarious. How many schools do we reach typically?
Oh gosh, somewhere, I think around 30 maybe, maybe 40. It depends. It varies from year to year. I think probably closer to 40, because it's 2 weeks. Yeah, between 30 and 40. I know they do multiples in a day.
And the title we did last year was?
The Ugly Duckling.
The Ugly Duckling.
Yeah.
We might actually be bringing the Playground King, back this spring as an extended version of it for the school tour. And that one incorporates a lot of our local singers, a lot of the young artists of Opera Memphis. And then the Summer Conservatory has 2 programs, one for younger singers, one for older singers, all under 18. And they do scenes from operas. They have vocal training. What am I missing?
They have acting training, sometimes stage combat. They do all kinds of things. Last year they did something cool where they designed opera companies, like fictional opera companies, and a season and all this stuff, and then presented what the season was going to be. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great program.
That is cool.
So if I don't know if you guys look at it this way, but if you have 30 days as being a type of pollination of guerrilla marketing, so to speak, and then you open it up to what you did at the Cooper Young Festival with the workshop or the open rehearsal. That's a little bit more of is that a kind of broadening, getting larger, and then you have the festival, right? And that's incorporating.
It's that gray area in between the 30 Days of Opera and the more main stage productions that we do that is the most interesting area to explore. And that's not just the case for Opera Memphis. That's for all opera companies in America and beyond. They're really trying to figure out what the right recipe is to engage people of our generation who are connected to Netflix and YouTube, who aren't interested to devote an hour or more to anything,
right.
Period. So that it's a challenge, and it is a recipe that we're all playing with. And last year we had a series that we referred to as the omakase, which is the Japanese word for a meal curated by a chef around a specific theme. So we had them around certain holidays: Halloween, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, and then the end of the season. And it was really interesting and really successful in a lot of ways, and we learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. And this year we're not referring to it as omakase anymore. It's going to be around specific holidays again, or around specific themes again, but we'll market it for each of those specific events. There will be more information about that coming out soon. But again, it's just us playing around with that gray area and finding out what works the best.
Sometimes when I talk or when I give talks about this, I say, Opera for many years was a store that sold white button-down shirts, and there's always a need for white button-down shirts, but retail has changed. You can no longer have a store that sells just white button-down shirts. You need to have some jeans and maybe some keychains and some T-shirts and some other stuff. And so you need to do that to stay relevant. And the question is opera going to transform and turn into something that makes sense in the 21st century in Memphis? Or will it become a sort of version of Irish step dancing, just existing in a very niche kind of world? It doesn't go away. I mean, opera will never go away so long as the scores are there. I mean, anybody can pick one up and start singing. But the question is, what is most relevant to this city today, and how do we ensure that we could do as much of it as possible to reach as many people as possible? And
is that expressed mostly in the festival, right? Is that?
Gosh, I think of everything. I think of our season as a three-legged stool, and I think of 30 Days as one piece, and that's, if you maybe thought of that as listening to the radio and just like picking up singles, and then, the main stage works that we do are the equivalent of, just buying a full album or maybe even a box set, and then the festival is more like the underground, 24-hour concert that you go to, rave somewhere, that nobody knows about. It's a little more underground, but also accessible. So, those three things I think all have equal weight, and there are people who enjoy all three. And there are people who enjoy 2 out of the 3, and there are some people who are really just in it for one, and that's fine. That's why the guerrilla marketing thing, in the end, we realized, the we shouldn't devalue these experiences just because somebody doesn't buy a ticket. You know, I mean, I love little glimpses of something. I love, you can enjoy a little bit of something and not want to go and have a full meal of it. And that's also totally fine.
Let's talk about the last festival where you had this diverse, we had a theme of wrestling, right? We had hip hop, the theme of malaria, racial, I mean, it was like the cornucopia of themes. Talk about that.
Last year's season was quite a festival of styles. We had something old and something new. The old was a 300-year-old Baroque opera that Ned had directed at Yale University 10 or so years ago, and called The Triumph of Honor by the very popular and well-known composer Alessandro Scarlatti. I'm shaking my head for those of you who can't see me. Scarlatti, I said before getting to know the piece,
he was sort of the Jello Biafra of early Baroque opera. That's all I'm going to say.
But the piece really grew on me, and it was a hilarious production. It turned into a 90s sitcom, and I refer to it affectionately as Friends, the Baroque opera.
Yes, yes.
In addition, our other big production during the festival was something that Opera Memphis has been developing for several years, and was a sequel to Opera Memphis's Ghosts of Crosstown, which was a series of premieres of short operas 3 years ago about employees who worked at the now Crosstown Concourse building, then the Sears Distribution Center. That there was such enthusiasm around that it turned into this sequel, the Opera 901 Showcase, which was 4 brand new operas about Memphis, people from Memphis, ideas around Memphis, places in Memphis, by mostly Memphians. Jerry Dye wrote most of the libretti, the text for those operas, and we had a lot of local composers writing the music. Sam Shoup, who is a very prominent commercial musician around town, and is also a professor at the University of Memphis now. Robert Patterson, who is a great local composer who also plays horn in the Memphis Symphony Orchestra. Who am I forgetting?
Kamala Sankaram is the non-Memphis composer, and we did deliberately choose one non-Memphis composer because we wanted to look at the impact of Memphis music on the rest of the world, to examine that. And Kamala is a Indian American composer who her side hustle is a Bollywood surf band called Bombay Ricky.
Oh, great.
The music is just crazy. She's a coloratura soprano who also has a degree in neuroscience. I mean, she's insane. And I thought that, she's somebody who is able to bring together lots of different styles of music and examine them. And so I thought she'd be the perfect person to sort of look at and think about how Memphis music has bled into the rest of music and impacted the rest of music. And actually, even the piece she wrote, it was 2 characters sit on the Mississippi River, and one of them, who was the visitor, started out in this very sort of formal tone row, kind of very formal atonal classical form, and the other was very blues. And over the course of the piece, the one who was in this very atonal world slowly warms up and joins into this blues world. It's sort of seduced by the sound. And it's one of those things that, it's funny, you mentioned earlier about people worry about classical music going over their head or whatever. Like, that sounded really heady and artsy-fartsy or whatever. You didn't need to know that to enjoy it, but knowing it adds a little something to it. It's like knowing statistics in baseball. Like, you don't need to know the statistics to enjoy a game, but for a lot of people, they add to it. So just as a sidebar there. It was Sam. It was Marco Pave did the hip hop opera, which was not a full piece, but scenes from a larger piece. I referred to it a couple of times as a concept album, at least for now, as he develops the larger piece. And so is Marco, Sam, right? Yeah, because the fifth one, actually, we brought back a piece from Ghosts of Crosstown, Moving Up in the World.
Moving Up in the World.
Be touring. Yes, moving up.
Moving up in the world.
Because he is in an elevator, and so he's moving up in the world. Yeah. All right.
But I would say that Opera Memphis and many other American opera companies are firmly committed to doing new works and presenting and commissioning new works. We are fortunate to be in this new golden age of American opera. And 5 years ago, you would not have encountered nearly as many American opera companies presenting new works. And fortunately now, most companies recognize the importance it has, especially when it comes to connecting local communities to their local opera company.
No, that's great.
And vice versa. So this year, we are we've co-commissioned with a number of other opera companies and the U.S. Department of Defense in their first ever opera commission to bring back the team that brought Moving Up in the World and
just Moving Up
in the World, librettist Jerry Dye and the composer Zachary Redler to do a new opera called The Falling and the Rising, which we will present as part of this year's festival and will be the cornerstone for this year's festival. It's based on interviews with a number of wounded vets. And it tells the story, first of all, of this, in the first scene of a female soldier recording a Skype message to her daughter across the seas. And because she cannot wish her daughter happy birthday on her birthday because she'll be actually deployed at that moment. And it's heartbreaking. Just that first scene is so sweet and touching. And I was crying a year ago when I was playing through it for the first time. And after that, she is injured and then goes into a coma and has a bunch of encounters with other soldiers that are based on those interviews.
Oh, wow.
It's an amazing piece.
Wow. When's that debut?
That's in April. I can't remember the exact dates. In April.
Yeah. The first half of April. Yeah.
First half of April. Wonderful. Jonathan?
What?
I know you're the
still
man
recovering from
you're the man
Department of Defense
with the
and
notes
opera.
there. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And then I realized where it was going. I was like, oh, that's nice.
Well, this will be actually the first professional production of that opera. It premiered last spring with mostly student cast in Fort Worth at Christian Brothers.
Texas Christian University.
Texas Christian.
Yeah, and actually there was a student cast, but there also was a cast of singers from the U.S. Army Field Band and Chorus, which is the full name of the co-commissioning entity. So they alternated performances, which I wasn't entirely clear on, but they did it half and half, and we're actually going to be doing it in New York in January with the U.S. Army Field Band fielding most of the resources, and we'll be helping out and promoting and advising, and then we'll be doing it here in Memphis in April.
Yeah, a little bird told me that Opera Memphis does as much, if not more, work than maybe the opera company in Houston. Is that right? Is that right? Is that or just about?
I believe what I was saying was that
game of telephone.
There's a leader. Yeah, so there's a program at Opera America called the Leadership Intensive Program.
Yes,
and we've had a large number of employees attend that, and that when I last checked, the only other company that had as many go through it was Houston Grand Opera, which is 10 times our size.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is that you guys are doing it. There's not a whole lot of downtime, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot going on. What is we kind of touched on the philosophy of Opera Memphis, but we always ask this question so far in our podcast of our guests is what are your hopes for Memphis and how Opera Memphis is being engaged with the betterment of the city and
I would say that that there are few communities that I know that identify with their local opera company as much as Memphians do, but there is still a lot of room for improvement, and that there are still people out there in Memphis who can be touched by the work that we do and by the product that we offer. So things like 30 Days does a great job with that, but we're always trying to figure out how to improve upon that model and reach newer audiences and for them to be moved by the work that we do.
I mean, what I hope for the city is that some of the great trends we see continue, some of the not so great trends reverse, but that the city recognizes its own worth and specialness more. I think I've never lived in a city where more people were down on the city or somehow think that problems that exist everywhere in every city are unique, or that we've done something wrong, or we don't deserve nice things or something. I'm always amazed by that. It's I've lived in a lot of cities, and I would not trade Memphis for any of them. So I hope that in terms of Opera Memphis, our definition of success is that everybody knows we exist. Everybody is proud that we are their opera company. Everybody knows that they're invited to anything we do, and that if they want to come, that they are able to, whatever they might be able to pay. That is my oldest and only definition of what success looks like.
Wonderful.
So, I want to respect you guys' time. I know we're kind of running long, but speaking of that, right? How can people get involved financially?
Well, they can always give us money.
Right.
That's always. So I think that
what channels might
welcome.
They look for?
OperaMemphis.org will tell you how to give money. I would say if you're already an opera fan, or if you are ready, jump in and see one of the productions this year. Madame Butterfly is a great first opera. If you are not entirely sure, come to some 30 Days performances. Come to see Moving Up in the World, or come to a WKNO preview, which has some of the best tunes from any opera, and we've got drinks and food, and it's kind of the best value in town, actually. So we're kind of crazy to do it, but we do it. So come to one of those and get a sense, and ease your way in. If you want to get involved as a volunteer, there are a lot of things that you can do to help out. And if you earn enough volunteer hours, then you get free tickets to the shows. So, that's a way that some people who, they're students or retirees or folks who, that is the way that they both add value to the company and help the company out, but it also gets them their tickets for the season. So that would be another way. And I also would say that one of the hardest things for me as a Yankee moving to Memphis, one of the hardest things has been getting people to talk about the negatives, to talk about what we could do better or what we're not doing well. People always, it's very easy and it's very frequent for people to tell us what we're doing that they like, but really for us to get better, to be a better company and to serve the city better, we need more people giving us feedback about what isn't working. And as a New Yorker, I'm very used to that.
We're terrified of being rude.
Exactly. And I'm used to someone saying, "Oh, I really like that. Yeah, that wasn't for me."
It's far more helpful.
It allows us to start addressing things. I mean, I've learned over time, to hang out near the bathrooms at intermission and try to eavesdrop and things like that. I learn a lot more. But I would say, we want to hear what you want from your opera company, what we could do. And we can't do everything. We're a small company with limited resources, but we want to belong to everybody. We want to be the opera company of every Memphian. So a big way you could help is to help us figure that out. This year, one of the reasons we're not doing the Playground King this year, though we love it, it's a great tradition, is the goal of 30 Days is to spread ourselves as thin as we can to try to reach as many places. And we realized we've done the Playground King for 6 years in the same 2 locations. And by the time we were sort of looking at that, we said, let's give it a year, and next year, let's bring it back, hopefully expanding the places where we're doing it. So it's not that we don't want to do it. It's not that we don't want to do it at Shelby Farms or Overton Park. We love both those venues. It's just how can we just want to make sure that we are also going to new places we've never been. And I think a big way to be helpful is if you have never seen Opera Memphis in your neighborhood, email me. I'm Ned at OperaMemphis.org. If you've never seen us in your neighborhood and you want to, let me know, because I take that very seriously. that would be hugely helpful, and it wouldn't cost you anything.
That's great. Have you guys played Beale Street yet?
We have sung on Beale a couple of times, and it's funny with 30 Days of Opera. When I was looking for a sort of tagline to explain it really quickly, the idea of we're going to bring Bohème to Beale Street was the thing that people loved, because someone told me early on in my time here that Memphis loves the intersection of high and low art, which was hard for me because I don't acknowledge that as a real distinction, but I knew what they meant, and what they meant was Bohème on Beale Street. And so I would say blues are one of the highest art forms there is. So, we have performed there a few times. We would love to do more. It's just, as with everything, it's a matter of what's going to be the best time to reach the most people in the most exciting and interesting way.
That's great. Well, gentlemen, thank you, Ned, Michael. Thank you so much for spending time with us. This is great. As I mentioned earlier, if opera is strange or new to you, just go see. Like I said earlier, a bunch of human beings get together and make something beautiful. It will affect you. Thank you, gents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right.
Ned and Michael, thank you again for having us out at Opera Memphis. It was a delightful interview. I say that for everything. Everything's delightful in my world.
Delightful.
I say wonderful and delightful hang. What else do we say?
Delightful hang, wonderful hang.
But I'm sincere, dang it.
Of course you are. I don't think anybody questions your sincerity.
I hope you got from this interview that you need to go see some opera. Maybe you only listen to R&B hip hop. There are R&B and hip hop artists exploring opera. You need to
Maybe you only listen to country. There are country artists.
You need to explore opera and have that thing mess with you, challenge you, and bless you.
Maybe you only listen to scream metal.
Oh gosh.
I think we covered that. Yeah.
Scandinavian screamo metal.
Yeah, right. We covered that.
Big thanks again. This is the close of our season. This is our first season. Hope you enjoyed Memphis Machine. We are looking forward to starting on season number 2. Oh, again, this season was brought to you by Snakebite Company, Redwire Audiovisual, and of course our beloved Ernestine and Hazels.
Where you can get the one and only
Soul Burger. That was sad. Catch you next season.